Hey there, friends. I get asked a lot, probably the most common question I get asked in my speaking, in my traveling, is I've got PTSD, I've been to a counselor, I've done this, I've done that, I'm still struggling, what do I do? And I think that question is kind of born from very few people, I think, do a good job of explaining all the factors that go into truly healing from PTSD. And to me, it comes down to three things. So what I want to talk about today is just a real quick, the basics of healing from PTSD. There's three parts to it. Part number one, I call it, you just got to connect. I'll explain that in a minute. Number two, stabilize. So connect, stabilize. And then last one, live with purpose. I could probably think of one clever word, but I like to live with purpose. So, step one, you got to connect. PTSD tends to isolate us. It tends to put us in a box. We're alone. We begin to feel like we're the only one going through what we're going through. Nobody can understand. Not only that, when you've compartmentalized your pain, your trauma, what you're going through, the pressure builds up. Step number one, and it arguably might be the hardest, you got to be willing to open up and connect with somebody and to allow somebody to listen to you. It could be walking into a counselor's office. It could be talking to a friend. It could be talking to a pastor. There are a million ways to connect. But you got to connect. You got to open up. And all those things that are in your brain that might be scary. Sometimes what's locked in our head about what happened to us, about how we reacted to what happened to us. One thing I found a lot with people suffering from PTSD is they have shame for things they did that were a reaction to what happened to them. And to talk about what happened to them, they know would lead to what I did. Maybe it's things they did with drugs. Maybe it's things they did with sex. Maybe it's time they wasted in their lives. Maybe it's time I spent in my room doing nothing. There's a whole bunch of ways that to compensate, to numb yourself to these things you're feeling that you feel sorry about, shame for, regret for. But you got to let them out. And you got to do it with another human being, so you got to connect. I'll come back more to that in a little bit. Step two, you got to stabilize. The nature of PTSD is you have trauma that is like burned into your brain. Memory is a chemical reaction. Trauma is like a chemical reaction etched into granite, like the Ten Commandments. Like it is ever present, it is always there. And when you are in PTSD at its worst, in a really hyper-vigilant, disassociative kind of state, you're raw. You're like raw emotion. Any little thing can set you off. Somebody looking at you the wrong way, something you hear on the radio, something you see on the internet, million things. Your environment becomes like this target-rich zone of like being triggered. And you got to stabilize, because if you can't stabilize, any connection that you've begun, any step you have taken to begin to unpack this stuff won't work. Now, there are a lot of ways to stabilize. You might need meds for a while. Definitely going to need some good tools that you can learn from a counselor. You might want to revisit your faith. Might be exercise. Probably it's a lot of different things. Now, when you're looking for something to help you stabilize, what you got to be wary of is the person who's like one thing fixes everything. And I've seen so much of this over the last 20 years working on this. And it might be, it's a hyperbaric chamber. You do that, you're going to be all better. Or it's this drug, and you do that, and you're going to be all better. Or go to this camp, and in 3 days, your life is going to be changed. Now, all of those things can have a significant impact on somebody. And when you've been really low, and you experience something that allows you to have some clarity and some stability, it can feel like my whole life has changed. And you're just up really high. But here's the problem. You need a lot of tools to build a house. You need even more tools to build a life. And if you try to build that life on just that one tool, it's going to let you down. And you see it all the time. You're struggling. You find this thing that all of a sudden gives you some clarity and some stability. You feel like you're on top of the mountain. And then time goes by, and sometimes you fall, and you can feel even worse. So you have to stabilize, but you want to do it in a variety of ways. Now, once you've connected, once you're stable, this is what's going to allow you to keep going forward, because that memory's not going to go away. You might process it. You might do something like EMDR that takes you from this really hypersensitive emotional state when it comes to the trauma, and you're able to move that over to where it needs to be. You're able to like see it in a logical way, not be impacted by it, but it's still there. You did not erase the memory. So as you go through life, and you might face other traumas, you might face more loss in your life, there's a decent chance it could come back. So what's going to help you get through those moments? What's going to make you the most resilient to it coming back again? It's going to be having a life of purpose. It's going to be having a life that you wake up every day and this is what I want to be doing. Now that purpose can be built upon a lot of things. It can be built on your family. It can be built on your faith. It can be built on a job. It can be built on hobbies. But whatever it is, it needs to be intentional. I almost want to say, instead of live with purpose, live with intentionality. I think long term, though, that means living with purpose. To be intentional long term, to not just get to this point in life where you just settle and you sit around. I think it's got to be purpose filled. It's got to be, again, this job or this person I'm in love with or this thing that I'm passionate about or whatever it may be. But when you're down and your family's good, your physical health is good, your faith is good, you're going to be okay. You're going to be able to take a lot of hits. If those things aren't right, if you don't have purpose in your life, if you don't feel purpose at work, if you don't have relationships with people that bring you joy, that bring you love, if you don't have an understanding of like where you want to be in 5 years and what do you want to do when you retire or whatever it's going to be, you're very vulnerable. You're going to be a ship that isn't very stable in a rough sea, bounced around all the time. But if you have a life with purpose, you're going to be like that big ship in a small sea, and you look outside and it looks like the waves are going all over the place, but once you get into the hold of that ship where it's all safe and warm, you're feeling pretty good. So 3 things. If you're going to get to the point that you're truly going to feel like I have overcome the trauma that I went through, I've addressed it, and not only that, now I am stronger and I'm moving forward, you're going to have to do those 3 things. You're going to have to connect with other people, and you're going to have to keep those connections for a whole host of reasons, whether it is unpacking the trauma so you don't feel alone with it, or it's having someone hold you accountable to what you were doing to move forward, or a million things in between. You got to be connected. It could just be for fun. It could just be for getting out of your own head. It could be for new possibilities in life. It could be people to notice when you have other things impacting you and they can, shine a light on it. But you got to be connected. Number 2, you got to stabilize. And there's a lot of tools out there. And you got to be careful. You don't want to think those tools are necessarily like the life changer. It might, but you're going to use them to change your life. And it might be a certain therapy. It might be a certain medication. It might be talk with a pastor. It might be an AA group. There's a million things that you can do to stabilize your life. And what I would say is, our psychology is as much an art as it is a science. And don't give up when something doesn't work. Don't give up when you go see someone you don't like them and then think, oh, none of that works. Maybe you just need a different person. Maybe you need to try a different therapy. Maybe you need to try something different. Also, don't think they're miracle workers and that, you take a med and it stabilizes you. Everything's good, because here's what will happen. If you don't also make changes in your life, eventually that medication is not going to have the same effect. And to have the same effect, you're going to have to take more of it. And then as you take more of it, there's going to be a whole lot more side effects that begin to set in that might even be worse than the reason you took it in the first place. They're to stabilize us so we can then grow from there. And then hopefully we don't need them. And then the last one, you got to live with purpose. You have to be intentional. You got to look at life in this way. Okay, we are here and meant to have a purpose. We are meant each day to make an impact, whatever that is. PTSD steals that from us because all we focus on is what's happened to us and what's dark inside our head. And then once we're able to unpack that and stabilize so that we can have a plan, we can say, I'm going to get up early. When I get up early, I'm going to read my Bible, and then I'm going to go to work, and then I'm going to come home, and then I'm going to take care of my chores, and then I'm going to love my family, and then I'm going to spend 2 hours working on that, business I want to start, or whatever it is. That is when you start realizing I am not a victim. I am not trapped by this thing called PTSD anymore. It does not have to be a scarlet letter for you can't live. Okay? The whole point is to heal from that and to use those experiences as fuel to live an even better life. And here's the good news that I can tell you. Thousands of miles, every state in the United States, 20 years speaking on this, teaching on this, meeting people. Almost without exception, the people that I meet that are the most exceptional, interesting people are the ones who went through some bad times, who went through hell and found a way to climb out of it and to build a new life. And usually that new life, because now they're not worried about what people think or what you're supposed to do. I mean, they survived. They were starving, and now they're alive again. It's a little bit easier to focus on what matters because all the other stuff, you begin to see how unimportant it is. So it's a gift. Now, I'm not one of those people that believes everything happens for a reason. I mean, maybe it does, but if it does, that's above my pay grade. I'll never understand why. But we always have a choice. We always have a choice. Here's this thing that happened to us. So how are we going to react to it? And I think the healthiest, most empowering way, if you've been diagnosed with PTSD or you're just going through a tough patch in your life, you've suffered trauma and you never take the time to be diagnosed with anything, or maybe you've had a lot of loss or a lot of disappointment, whatever it may be, the healthiest way to look at that has given me a view of reality. Reality is not Instagram. Reality is not a polished YouTube video. Reality is we suffer, we go through pain, we lose things, we do things we know we shouldn't do, we have loss, we have regret. That is reality. And if you take that reality and you use it as fuel to make decisions focused on things that actually matter, like our family, our faith, doing things that fill us with purpose, giving to other people, you might find that thing you would never want to have happen again, that you would never wish upon another human being, might be the very thing that has allowed you to live a life very few people get to live. You do it, connection, stabilize, you find a way to live with purpose. So if that all makes sense to you, keep checking back. I will give you more instruction on all of those three things more, along with some great stories of people I have met along the way who have done just that. May you have a blessed day. I'm Silouan. Peace.